All right, so this is a very short PowerPoint that I just added to our course today. It's titled Principles of Immunity. And there's 4 specific terms here that are very important, especially since they are on the test and I don't want to change the test. So definitely know these. So these are defined, some of the things that we've kind of already talked about, right? Just kind of putting it all together. So we're going to talk about active, naturally acquired immunity as opposed to passive, naturally acquired. And then we'll talk about active, artificial acquired immunity and passive, artificial acquired immunity. And we're going to talk about an example of each of these. So you need to be able to link these up with their examples. So this is a good diagram table that has all 4 of them. So when we break up immunity, you'll notice that we can break it up between active and passive, natural and artificial. So the example here, immunity that results from an immune response in an individual upon exposure to an infectious agent. And I think that poor picture is of a kid with measles. So they acquired this infection, right? Naturally acquired it, right, from the environment or someone else. And their immune system is actively responding, right? So maybe they're producing cytotoxic T cells, right, because this is a viral infection. Maybe it's also producing antibodies, right, to try and stop these viruses from getting into more cells. So it's active. Your immune system is doing something. Vaccination, right, this is still going to get an active response from your immune system, right? But how you're getting exposed is artificial. This is not natural, right? This is something we've come up with. So whenever we're giving you a shot or putting something into you, right, that's what we refer to as being artificial. But the great thing about this is you get an active response from the immune system, right? You may be getting, depending on what vaccine they're giving you, you're getting a nice strong T cell and B cell response. And the awesome thing about priming your adaptive immune response is what cells are you producing? Memory cells. Those are the key components to active immunity, is that production of memory cells, right? And that's what makes you, quote unquote, immune to future exposures, right? The kid, if he gets exposed to measles again, hopefully won't even see any type of rash or anything. The immune system is going to respond so quickly. Unlike passive, this is, as the word implies, it's been passed to you. So we've kind of already talked about this, right? You get immunity passed to you from your mom, right? Naturally, this happens. Your mom's breast milk contains what antibodies which help protect you? Breast milk is a secretion, IgA, right? It always has IgA. Now that first milk that you produce contains another special long-lived antibody for protection for the baby. It's the colostrum, and what antibody does it have? IgG. And then even IgG crosses the placenta, right? Naturally, why the baby is in utero. And unfortunately, this can cause a condition we'll talk about next time that you're probably familiar with, is that hemolytic disease of the newborn, where you don't match Rh with your baby. And if you have those antibodies, they'll go across the placenta and attack the baby's red blood cells. So this is natural. The problem with passive is someone else made these antibodies for you, right? Mom. You didn't make them, did you? You did not. So what did you not produce? Memory cells. So this doesn't give you long-lasting immunity, does it? This is passive, this is short term. They were passed to you. Just the product of the immune system, the antibodies. You didn't make them, so therefore you don't have the memory cells. So if you get exposed again and those antibodies are gone that were passed to you, then you're not going to be immune, you're going to be susceptible. But this is better than nothing, right? Thank you, Mom, for passing me some protection. Now, can we do this artificially? Yeah. We can take antibodies from somebody, stick it in a syringe, right? Or through a needle in an IV bag, give it to someone else. Again, this isn't long-lasting immunity. We're giving you someone else's antibodies. You didn't make what? Memory cells. You didn't make these antibodies. You don't have memory cells. Once these antibodies are gone, you're not protected. So typically what we're giving someone is what we call serum. And this is the liquid phase of your blood when your blood has been allowed to clot. So it does not contain the clotting proteins, but antibodies are found in that liquid phase of your blood that we call serum. They're also found in plasma. The problem with plasma is it has the clotting proteins in it too, and those kind of get in the way. And especially if we just want to give you antibodies. So, you know, they say you can save up to 5 lives when you donate a pint of blood. They're really not kidding, because they don't just use the red blood cells. They take antibodies, they take the plasma, they take the platelets. I mean, they can divide it up, you know, several different ways. And typically they always are going to remove most of the red blood cells from it, because what they usually give people is mostly just red blood cells, because of the problems that you could run into if you give the plasma, the liquid phase, with those antibodies, if you give them to someone else, right? So although my blood is very popular because it's O, which means that I don't have any antigens for other people's red blood cells, antibodies to attack those red blood cells I'm giving. But if they took my plasma and gave it to somebody, you would probably have anti-A and anti-B antibodies and could destroy their A or B red blood cells if they had that. Right? So they give what's called pack cells. So they take the red blood cells out, kind of pack them up. They add fluid to it, right? But it's going to not contain the antibodies, and sometimes not even contain clotting factors and things like that, because that can create problems. So naturally acquired, right? And again, we're really referring to our adaptive immune response, right? Through natural events, natural exposure. Immunization mimics these events by artificially, right, getting your immune system to respond. So we can do this naturally or artificially, right? We can naturally or artificially actively get your immune system going, right? You can be exposed to something, or we can purposely expose you in the form of artificial. Passive, as the name implies, right? It's something we pass. So it occurs naturally from the mom across the placenta of IgG, and IgA in the breast milk. And then we spoke about previously, right, that rich colostrum that has a lot of IgG. And so why would we want to give antibodies to, I mean, it makes sense for a newborn baby, right? For mom to pass these antibodies to them, right? It makes sense to vaccinate. Why give someone passively someone else's antibodies? You do this to help them prevent getting a disease, or after they've likely been exposed to a disease. Huh?
After they've been exposed to it.
Right. So what's the benefit of giving it to them, though? Well, it's not going to build up their immune system because we're just giving them antibodies, right? So the antibodies are going to help protect them, right? So remember when we talk about how long it takes to make an antibody? Yeah, so like if somebody has the infection, right, or may have been exposed to it, if they don't have the protection, so one example is tetanus, right? If they haven't been vaccinated and they have a serious infection, one of the things they could give them is someone else's antibodies. We call this antiserum. Anti meaning against, right? It has antibodies in it. Serum, as I said, is that component of your blood that contains the antibodies, right? So they can give someone those antibodies, and that's going to help protect them. They may even vaccinate them, but remember, even if they vaccinate them, it's going to take a while before their immune system is going to produce that antibody. But the good thing with that, though, is you are going to produce memory cells. So then you'll be protected further down the line. Can everyone be vaccinated? No. Some people have immunological disease or allergies to vaccines, and so we can't vaccinate them. So for some infections, again, like tetanus, it'd be great if we could, I don't know why it did that. Here, we'll leave it on that one. It'd be good if we could protect them by giving them someone else's antibodies. Right? That would be beneficial for them. And again, think about it. Even if we vaccinate you, you've got that time frame. So notice I said that you use it to prevent. Right? So you could give it to someone in the meantime before their active immunity kicks in. Make sense? So antibodies are, as I said, my absolute favorite, right? Because they're so powerful, right? And next time, like I said, review all the stuff that we've gone over before. We're going to really try and talk through it, draw it out next time. We still have disorders to go through, so it'll be in your best interest to look through it ahead of time. Your book doesn't cover one of the components of one of the hypersensitivities we're going to go over real well. So I have posted a like one-page document that I want you guys to read on type 3, and it specifically goes over one of the objectives, which is called serum sickness. It's one of the things that can happen with the type 3 hypersensitivity we're going to look at. And one of the things I want you guys to remember too is this is an immunological response. Okay, so all the things that we've been talking about so far, T cells getting activated and B cells getting activated and producing antibody, all this happens for these responses. The problem is it's against something we don't necessarily need an immunological response against, right? Or will damage something that we need. Just like when we talked about transplants, right? You're not going to get a heart transplant unless you absolutely need it to live, right? The problem is your immune system doesn't recognize it as self and is going, no, 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 it's not supposed to be here. And so you've got to instead suppress your immune system to actually keep that organ, right? And so that's one of the active areas of research too, is like how can we potentially engineer, like make organs for people, right? So you're like, wow, she's not kidding, right? We're not talking sci-fi here. So one of my good friends, when she first graduated from where we went to undergrad, she stayed and was working on a research project where they were doing just that. They were trying to get pig organs, right, to match human organs, because they're actually genetically very close to us. They were not successful. It was not an easy task. And again, they're trying more so, you know, the different signaling, and the more we know about how the immune system works, how can we kind of turn off this one system and yet keep the rest of it working so that people that have these transplants can keep those organs without the rejection happening. And you know, that's the really scary thing is the reason why you got that organ is you need it to live, right? And if your immune system rejects it, then unless you get another one, which they're not easy to come by in the first place, never mind trying to get a second organ. If we can fine-tune this better, because if we shut down your immune system so you can keep that organ, that leaves you susceptible to other infection, right? So trust me, people who've had organ transplants, they're not going to any of our festivals with lots of people, right? Because they're fearful of the exposure. They're not working at daycares with all those little germ magnets running around, right? Because they're going to try and limit their exposure to pathogens because their immune system is purposely, they're taking drugs to purposely suppress it so they can keep that organ, right? So immunology, although it can be really awesome in protecting us, right, it can be detrimental too, right? And so that's some of the things, the disorders, right, that we're going to talk about next time. But it's the same reactions, right, that we've been talking about. Just unfortunately, the start and the outcome don't match the threat. Make sense? Okay. So think about that as you're reading through and getting ready for our last lecture on Thursday. All right. I'm done torturing you guys for tonight. I will do the best I can. When I post announcements, you guys get emails, right? Oh, you should. Whatever account you have linked. I would say check back tonight or even tomorrow, but I will try and post an announcement. I don't... No, wait. Let me hit done.